I am privileged to follow the course set firmly by my predecessors, almost all of whom I have known personally, some very closely, and all of whom I have held in the highest esteem. They were all human rights defenders of the first rank, exceptional and courageous, and motivated by the unequaled courage of those who risk their future and their families to confront injustice when they see it. My first address to this Council takes place at a time when conflicts in the Middle East and North Africa regions in particular are escalating dramatically. The latest report by the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Syrian Arab Republic brings fresh evidence that this ancient civilization has devolved into a slaughterhouse.
Once again, I am left with no choice but to describe a war which worsens every day. I have run out of words to depict the gravity of the crimes committed inside Syria. We have implored the parties and influential states to forge a peaceful settlement. We have asked the Security Council to refer the situation in Syria to the International Criminal Court. But we have been faced with inaction. This inaction has allowed the warring parties to operate with impunity, flagrant disrespect for the rules of engagement, and nourished the violence that has consumed Syria. Its most recent beneficiary is so-called ISIS.
Spreading outwards from this initial anchorage in the chaos of the Syrian conflict, the Takfiri, or so-called ISIL group that currently in effect controls large swathes of northern Iraq, has demonstrated absolute and deliberate disregard for human rights. The Takfiris, who recently murdered James Foley and hundreds of other defenseless victims in Iraq and Syria, do they believe they are acting courageously, barbarically slaughtering captives? What virtue are they demonstrating exactly? They reveal only what a Takfiri state would look like.
Verified reports detail that Israel is systematically hunting members of ethnic and religious groups and giving them the ultimatum, convert or die.
Another example of the need to end persistent discrimination and impunity is the Israel-Palestine conflict, with the recurring violence and destruction evident in the repetition of crises in Gaza. The most recent outbreak of armed conflict has had a particularly devastating toll in death, suffering and destruction.
An open-ended ceasefire, fortunately, is now in place. The impact of recent events, however, will continue to be felt for a long time to come. This summer's deadly escalation of hostilities in Gaza was only the most recent one of a series of repeated escalations over the past 6 years. But this time the level of death and destruction was even more devastating than before.
The situation in Libya has deteriorated very rapidly and represents a growing threat to regional security. Multiple armed groups are indiscriminately shelling heavily populated areas through the use of heavy artillery and even aircraft, leading to the death and injury of civilians, including children. We remain concerned about the situation in Ukraine. Every effort must be made by both the Ukrainian government and the armed groups, as well as by neighboring states, including the Russian Federation, to protect civilians in this deplorable conflict and to ensure compliance with international law.
Over the last 6 months, we have witnessed a marked deterioration of the human rights situation in the east and most recently southeast of the country. The current registered death toll as of 21st September is 3,543 if we are to include the 298 victims of the Malaysian plane crash.
In the Central African Republic, a near total absence of state control over most parts of the country continues to facilitate impunity for violations. Ex-Seleka and anti-Balaka forces continue their attacks with the civilian population the main victims. The International Commission of Inquiry on CAR has already concluded that there are reasonable grounds to believe that all sides of the conflict have perpetrated serious violations of international humanitarian and human rights law since January 2013. In its second phase, the Commission will carry out investigations beyond Bangui. In South Sudan, despite a recent lull in fighting, we have continued to observe serious human rights violations by both parties to the conflict. Regarding the Democratic Republic of the Congo, I was appalled to learn recently that more than 1 in 3 men surveyed in the North Kivu province admitted he had committed sexual assault. I have been deeply impressed by the work of this Council's Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. I hope the General Assembly and Security Council will give this report their fullest attention and take steps to ensure accountability for those who have perpetrated crimes against humanity. I attach great importance to the investigation on Sri Lanka mandated by this Council. The special rapporteurs are the eyes and ears of this Council. Both are practical sources of expert guidance for national policies, laws and practice. While the Universal Periodic Review is an unprecedented tool to maintain a constant review of human rights developments in all member states.